Our minds are all we have. They are all we have ever had, and they are all we can offer to others. That's a quote from Sam Harris's book, Waking Up. Let's take a look. This is an intense book to read. Spirituality and consciousness are very complicated concepts to deal with in a short book. I have questions that I'd love to hear from you all about. I'm relatively new to the topic of mindfulness, and any help I can get with understanding would be appreciated. But before I get into the really deep stuff, let's just do a brief overview. Sam Harris is best known for his commentary on religion. He is a neuroscientist and author who has become a voice of reason for many. This book, Waking Up, was published in 2014 and is on spirituality. Harris has a voice on this issue that is quite different from other atheists. I always seek to understand life and the world around me, but I want to approach it with the aim of seeking truth, not comfort. This book is perfect for that. Waking Up is 206 pages long and has 5 chapters with a conclusion. Harris seeks to explain certain truths about consciousness and the subjective experiences of the mind. He takes great pains along the way to ensure that the reader takes this journey with a level of intellectual vigor and without superstition. I'm confident that Harris doesn't see this book as a complete instruction on the practice of mindfulness. In fact, he says at one point that he doesn't think he's good enough to become a guru. I think in true Sam Harris style, he is simply seeking to impart his knowledge to the extent that he can, with as much dedication to the truth as possible. A review in the New Republic by Trevor Quirk claimed that Harris's approach is entirely different in this book from others he has written, because he is exposing an intelligent and sensitive side, as opposed to his usual vicious delight in ridiculing humanity at its most vulnerable. I honestly can't understand Quirk's view here. Just because there are people who only enjoy watching religious debates to reinforce their own feelings of intellectual superiority, doesn't mean that's what Harris is seeking to achieve. I've only ever seen him treat his intellectual opponents with the utmost respect, more so than other new atheists. Just have a look at how reasonable and calm he is in the face of the massively aggressive Ben Affleck. I'm sure anyone familiar with Harris has seen this before.
Goddamn, these gays are all trying to eat each other, you know?
Okay, let me just give you what you want. There are hundreds of millions of Muslims who are nominal Muslims, who don't take the faith seriously, who don't want to kill apostates, who are horrified by ISIS, and we need to defend these people, prop them up, and let them reform.
Dude, you're talking ISIS couldn't fill a AA ballpark in Charleston, West Virginia, and you were making a career out of talking about ISIS.
But no, it's not just ISIS. It's all jihadists. It's global. It's a phenomenon of global jihad.
I think that's the opposite.
There is those things. There's ISIS. There's global jihadists. The question is the degree to which you're willing to say, because I've witnessed this behavior, which we all object to on the part of these people, I'm willing to flatly condemn those of you I don't know and have never met.
No,
this
it's
is
not
based
condemning
on
people. It's ideas. You've got to make the
and
distinction.
people who believe in those ideas.
So it's people who believe in it.
Based on reality, Ben. We're not
action.
making it up. That in the Muslim world, it is mainstream belief.
Harris's dedication to truth and reason remains as solid in this book as any other. It's the topic that's changed, and perhaps to those who see him as arrogant, this book may show more willingness to admit not knowing. Either way, have a look at this review of Waking Up because it gives an interesting perspective of the book. I'll link it in the description below. Harris speaks in clear and simple language throughout Waking Up. Reading it isn't difficult, but comprehending the concepts can be. Harris himself claims that it is possible that consciousness is irreducibly complex, and we may never be able to scientifically explain it. It's more that he's trying to reveal to us the truth of subjective experience and explain what the practice of mindfulness can achieve. Harris wants to show us that the self is an illusion of our consciousness. He attempts to use science, reason, and evidence of personal experience to demonstrate this. I found the discussion about split brain phenomenon particularly freaky. I understood that the left and right sides of the brain were better at different things, but the idea that the sides of your brain can be disconnected and then develop 2 separate personalities, without anyone really noticing, blows my mind. Harris couldn't help but take a stab at religion here, asking, if a split-brain patient's left hemisphere accepts the divinity of Jesus, but the right brain doesn't, are we to imagine that she now harbours 2 immortal souls, one destined for the company of angels and the other for an eternity in hellfire? His goal in talking about this, however, isn't anything to do with religion, but is instead aimed at the illusion of the self. If we can develop two separate selves within our head, two different consciousnesses, then which one is really you? This was a very clever technique to make the reader consider what they are truly associating with the idea of their self. Seriously, check it out. I still have some questions about consciousness and the self that I don't think were truly answered in this book, although I might have missed something and I'm hoping some of you can help me figure it out. Harris says, consciousness is the prior condition of every experience. The self or ego is an illusory appearance within it. Look closely for what you are calling I, and the feeling of being a separate self will disappear. What remains, as a matter of experience, is a field of consciousness, free, undivided, and intrinsically uncontaminated by its ever-changing contents. And another quote is, our habitual identification with thought, that is, our failure to recognize thoughts, as appearances in consciousness, is a primary source of human suffering. It also gives rise to the illusion that a separate self is living inside one's head. The immediate question I have here is whether he thinks everyone's consciousnesses are exactly the same. If all the things that make us different from one another, our thoughts and our emotions, are not really part of our consciousness, and we can separate our consciousness from them, then are we all the same? After all, Harris does say, in subjective terms, you are consciousness itself. You are not the next evanescent image or string of words that appears in your mind. Not seeing it arise, however, the next thought will seem to become what you are. I am consciousness, and consciousness is free and uncontaminated by thoughts and emotions. So there is nothing about me that's different from the next person with consciousness. Is this conclusion right? What I'm really trying to understand is whether Harris thinks consciousness is a blank canvas which everything just appears upon. If this is the case, then I can separate myself from mental suffering because I can distance myself from those thoughts that I identify with. Mental suffering can be ended. But if you are truly to reach an enlightenment where you are separated from all your emotions and thoughts and just let them pass you by without attaching any significance to them, isn't this the perfect recipe for apathy? There's a quote on page 30 that may shed some light on what Harris thinks of this. He says, focusing on training the mind to the exclusion of all else can lead to political quietism and hive-like conformity. The fact that your mind is all you have, and that it is possible to be at peace even in difficult circumstances, can become an argument for ignoring obvious societal problems. But it is not a compelling one. The world is in a desperate need of improvement. In global terms, freedom and prosperity remain the exception. And yet this doesn't mean we need to be miserable while we work for the common good. Should I understand from this statement that Harris thinks we should use our thoughts to help achieve peace in the world, but not attach ourselves to those thoughts? What if I experience a certain pride in achieving some good? Should I distance myself from that pride because it is part of the illusion of the self? Or should I use my mindfulness strategically? Should I remember that my consciousness is separate when I'm in pain, and forget it when I experience pleasure? Given Harris's dedication to the truth, I can't imagine he'd support that view. Despite all these questions that I have no doubt that anyone who reads this book will benefit from it, especially those who haven't practiced mindfulness themselves. A book that gives you a different perspective and changes your way of looking at things is always a good book. There are so many people out there struggling with getting through every day and finding meaning in their lives. Mental health problems have gone through the roof. I'm not saying mindfulness is a cure, but I can't see how trying to find contentment within yourself could be a bad thing. One last point is on the final chapter on psychedelic drugs and the like. Once again, Harris goes into a discussion with so much dedication to reason. I really do admire how he approaches every discussion. He talks about his experiences with drugs and admits they were some of the most enlightening and some of the most horrifying experiences of his life. He doesn't try to tell you that you should or shouldn't take these drugs. He just tries to give you a truthful account of their possible benefits and failings. While they can provide you with a perspective it would be difficult to gain in other ways, they are not a cheat to achieving mindfulness. He points out the cannibal societies that frequently use psychedelics. I think it's fairly unlikely that you are suddenly going to become enlightened by reading Waking Up. Harris makes it clear that the experiences of the consciousness are subjective. To achieve consciousness without the self means learning to recognize thoughts, as transient appearances in consciousness, and to no longer be distracted by them, if only for short periods of time. This may sound simple enough, but actually accomplishing it can take a lot of work. I think everyone should keep this in mind when reading this book. Don't expect too much from yourself or from reading Waking Up. You're just starting to understand what your brain is capable of. I'd love to hear everyone's thoughts on this book, and please comment if you think you know some of the answers to my questions. If you enjoyed this video, please like or subscribe below. See you guys next time.